Hello everyone, it's time to live look at the astrology. My name is Katie Sweetman and this is your look at the astrology for January 26th through February 1st, 2026. I'm having one of those days where everything is just taking longer than usual, so I know that I'm having a little bit of a late start today. I hope you're well. I hope you're warm. There's just a lot of things going on right now, and how to even address or even just speak succinctly about it. I can say that on one hand, we are in Aquarius season. And something that you've heard me say over and over again is that the zodiac is the wheel of life, meaning it teaches us about life. It reveals every time we go into another season, another zodiac sign. We went into Aquarius season on I think it was the 19th. We go into a season that is meant to reveal the archetype, in this case, of Aquarius. Aquarius is the 11th sign. It's humanity, it's society, it's social issues, it's social causes. It is almost to the end of the zodiac. We have, well, at least we began our journey back around March 20th of this year when the sun went into Aries. And here we are nearly to the end of the zodiac year. And each sign is a step on a ladder. And we can live the zodiac in a year, meaning from March to March, the zodiac, the astrological year, or we can live the zodiac in a day. We can live it in a life. We can live it in all of our lives. Kind of zooming out a little bit. But when we get to Aquarius, we haven't quite reached the end of our journey. And it's a space where we can start to look back. We can start to look towards the future, but it's meant to be a space in the astrology that is about connecting us to the collective, society, humanity. It is one of those signs, especially as you get to the end of the zodiac signs, where the duality seems to be greater. You have on one hand the sign of society and humanity. On the other hand, you can feel really lost and disconnected during this time, because we sort of start to realize, who are my friends? Who are my community, for example? So it's Aquarius season plus 5 planets in Aquarius. We have the sun, we have Mercury, we have Mars, we have Venus, and we even have Pluto. So if there's any doubt of what Pluto and Aquarius means for us, certainly we are beginning to see a facet, and merely a facet, of Pluto's time in Aquarius. But before I get too far, I just want to reintroduce myself, and my name is Katie Sweetman, and I am an astrologer and psychic medium located here in the rolling snowy hills of Central Maryland, and every week we gather live to look at the astrology. You hear me say it every week. The astrology is 50%. You are the other 50%. So you will live, for example, Aquarius season, depending on your own astrology. And maybe you're thinking, but I have nothing in Aquarius. Don't forget, again, that the zodiac is the wheel of life. It is meant to reveal life to you, even in this time as we look out towards the world, we look out towards our friends and our community, and we even, with Saturn at the end of Pisces, start to prepare for the this sort of ending and beginning. And as an astrologer, 2026, I always had some big question marks for me. Because one of the things that's very unique about 2026, and we saw this to some degree in 2025, is that the outer planets are all in new signs. In 2025, the planets went back. Today, Neptune is in Pisces. That's not a force of habit. Neptune is in Aries. We had a brief I think it was like 6 months of Neptune and Pisces from the end of March of 2025 to sometime in the beginning of or middle of October of 2025. We had Neptune in Aries, but the planets went back. Neptune went back to Pisces in October. Saturn went back to Pisces in September 1st. And we also had Uranus go back to Taurus. I can't even remember at the moment when it went back into Taurus. November. So 2026 is a year where the outer planets are not going back to the signs that they have been in for years. And in some cases, Neptune was in Pisces for 14 years, for many years. We're in a new time, a new era. But it's just time. How do we live it? But things are moving. And one of the things that I was thinking about even last week, because at the time we had Pisces at the very end of, not Pisces, Neptune at the very end of Pisces. And even with Saturn nearing the end of Pisces, right now it's at 28 Pisces, we're in this space of the zodiac that's really moving us. It's moving us emotionally, spiritually, psychically, energetically. And whereas Neptune is now in Aries, it's beginning to bring us into something new. Neptune, rather Pisces, sorry, my brain is not quite working today. Pisces is like the dream. It's the vision, it's the illusion, it's something that's conceptual, it's a feeling, it's pregnancy. But Aries is action, it's birth, it's new beginnings. Something now wants to become real and tangible. So that may be a theme, especially when Saturn gets into Aries on February 13th. Something now wants to become tangible. But it's a very strange time, just because a lot of things are shifting and moving. And again, when I was looking ahead to the astrology of 2026, I was like, what's going on end of January, particularly what's going on in February, because February we have Saturn into Aries on February 13th. We have the solar eclipse in Aries on February 17th. We have the Saturn-Neptune conjunction on February 17th, on February 20th, and that's just a lot of things that are happening in 1 month. So having said all that, let's sort of go back a little bit, because we have had 14 years again of Neptune in Pisces. So we will never have Neptune again in Pisces. Why? Because Neptune takes 160 years to go around the zodiac. So whatever we lived over the past 14 years, it might not be quite so obvious, because Neptune doesn't do its work on an obvious level. In fact, Neptune, as an evolutionary planet, as an evolutionary force, it says that we had to do our healing work on Pisces. Pisces, again, means something to us, even if we're like, but I have nothing in Pisces, because Neptune, or rather Pisces, is the end of the zodiac. It represents a very particular part of the wheel of life that takes us beyond this world. It can be the sign of spirituality. It can be the sign of everybody losing their minds. Feels like that was the case in the past 14 years. But it also has been a time to some degree where people have been searching for spirituality more. You've seen more about astrology and crystals. Not that that is necessarily the answer, or I just think a lot of people are trying, or at least we're trying to figure things out. And Neptune can dissolve the boundaries between our physical world and our non-physical world. But now it's in Aries, and it's hard to say concretely what that's going to be, because nobody has been alive for Neptune in Aries. We had, again, that preview 6 months last year, but I think a lot of us would be hard-pressed to really point out what was really happening with Neptune in Aries. We can say intellectually that some sort of evolutionary force will work its way through the Aries archetype. Actions, new beginnings, renewal, our relationship with power, our relationship with leadership. It could also say that we need to heal to our relationship with the Aries archetype, because Neptune can talk about needing to transcend a facet of that sign that it's in, and to use, in the case of Neptune in its highest expression, to use compassion, to use empathy. I realize it's a nice idea. It doesn't always work out that way, but that is the bar that we are all theoretically reaching for. So we are in the zodiac. Again, it could be for a day, it could be for a year, it could be for a lifetime, and each step represents a progression that we're all trying to do. and to make ourselves better. And Neptune can say, well, here's an opportunity to make yourself better, to transform this one particular area of your astrology. Aries as an archetype, but also whatever Aries forms in your personal astrology. It could be your career, it could be relationships, it could be family, for example. But Neptune has the other side to it, which is the abyss. It can bring us into the deepest, sometimes a very confusing, can't even say that word, parts of ourselves, and it can even touch on illusions and the illusions that we all have about ourselves, about who we are, about the world. So there's again that duality now, even with Neptune and Aries. And I remember when I was like a baby astrologer, when Neptune went into Pisces, and I was sort of reading a lot of channeled stuff, and it was like, oh, we're going into the golden age, everything's going to be so amazing. And I, kind of naively at the time thought that, maybe that could be the case, but maybe the Scorpio side of me was like a little too practical and grounded. It was like, when we see it, maybe it will happen, but probably at the end of the day, we're all human beings. So not to make any sort of lofty predictions about Neptune and Aries, it will be complicated. Neptune just in general is a complicated planet. It works on a level like the moon. It's very in the intermediary. It pulls, it makes us all more sensitive. It can open up our intuitive gifts and abilities, but it can also pull us away. There's a need for a lot of grounding. Neptune and Aquarius was a very long time ago, and so maybe we can sort of reach back into just a sort of a different relationship with Neptune. Aquarius would have been 14 years before 2011, 2012. I think that's 98 is when it went into Aquarius. So these are much bigger arcs of time with Neptune and Aries. And what's curious about Neptune and Aries, particularly in 2026, 2027, and the first few months of 2028, is that Saturn will also be in Aries. So Saturn is way more concrete. Saturn is about our priorities. And speaking of which, over the last 3 years, because we are beginning to come to the end of our time of Saturn in Pisces, our priority has been this very unique place in the astrology to make peace, to let go, to find compassion, to find empathy. And even though on a human level it is incredibly hard and difficult, that's the transcendence of Pisces. It is to reach beyond ourselves. It is the faith. Jupiter, Pisces is ruled by Jupiter, much like Sagittarius. Sagittarius is also faith, but the faith with Pisces comes from within, as opposed to the faith with Sagittarius comes from outside of itself, usually through religion or philosophy or experience. So we've had this time with Pisces, plus Neptune in Pisces, and that's beginning to come to an end, but it's to begin to listen for Saturn in Pisces as it gets to the end of Pisces over the next few weeks, because it's going to start to put this time since March of 2023 into focus. Maybe a soft focus, maybe a little bit confusing, but it can, I think the power of Pisces is that it can really move us, prepare us for something new, and move us on a collective level. And to go back to Aquarius for a moment before I forget, don't forget the collective is a force. So we have that collective energy of Aquarius, we have the energy of Saturn, and even though Neptune is now in Aries, it's also pulling at a lot of the tectonic plates of the world, and a lot of things may be moving in the coming weeks. It could be internal, it could be external, it could be both, because this is all preparing us for something very new when we start to have Saturn and Neptune in Pisces. Again, I said this at the beginning, there's just so many things going on. It's hard to and it's eclipse season, and we're going to have a solar eclipse in 3 weeks. We have all this energy pointed towards the end of Pisces, but let's not forget that Jupiter, the ruler of Pisces, is receiving this energy in Cancer. So there's a lot of deep emotional currents. Cancer is my emotion, my feelings, my wants, my desires. And Pisces is collective emotions, collective feelings, collective wants and desires. Again, we're going to have a solar eclipse on February 17th. This will be at 28 degrees of Aquarius. Even though that eclipse is 3 weeks away, we're feeling it. It's happening now, even though it's not now. I've just noticed that the month before eclipse season is typically a time when the eclipse energy can start to manifest. This eclipse on the 17th will open up a chapter of time that will take us to the next eclipse, which will be on August 12th of 2026. That eclipse will be at 20 degrees of Leo. But for me as an astrologer, and particularly about planets at the end of their signs, this eclipse is going to be square Uranus and Taurus. It is the culmination of all these shifts and movements that we've seen with Uranus and Taurus since 2018 and 2019. It also says that for the next 6 months, there's a very strong Uranus component to our experiences. Awakenings, shifts, transformations, seeing things differently, new consciousness, and sometimes even shakeups. So it's a lot of potent energy that's kind of well concentrated in a part of the sky and even a part of our own astrology over the coming weeks. And I think really as we get throughout February, it's just going to be a bit intense, if I'm being completely honest. And it's going to sort of carry some of these themes into August when we have that next eclipse. So yeah, and that's not even the last of what's happening this week. We have Mars conjunct Pluto tomorrow, which is January 27th. And this is only the second conjunction of Mars and Pluto in Aquarius in 250 years. So Mars is our drive, it is our short-term focus, our short-term action. Mars will typically spend 6 weeks in a zodiac sign. And then it meets up with Pluto, this evolutionary energy, like Neptune is an evolutionary force. And together, these two planets, they have the ability to move mountains. It can be a great transmutation, but also it's really powerful energy that can be constructive or destructive. It's an energy that you see, just to sort of give some context, in the charts of athletes. You know, people that really have a lot of power, a lot of stamina. They want to see things to the end. Sometimes there's a lot of drive and competition. But this is all being focused on Aquarius. So this is not a personal sign, although Aquarius might be a personal sign for our own astrology. But it's happening in a sign that's about humanity, the collective, social issues and social causes. So it needs a positive outlet. And, you know, how are we taking our own energy and what are we putting it towards? Mars conjunct Pluto. Mars is also activating two things. One, it's activating the larger story of Pluto's time in Aquarius. And Pluto will be in Aquarius for 20 years. So I know that's a huge amount of time. But these bigger themes that we are seeing are not perhaps a coincidence from the eyes of astrology. It's really pulling at these larger questions about humanity and society, our role in humanity and society, what is humanity and society, also AI and technology. That's also a big part of Pluto and Aquarius, but that's a big macro theme. And then the other thing that Mars will be activating is, again, that solar eclipse to come in 3 weeks. So it's another reason why we may see the eclipse of February perhaps in January. And then we also have a Leo full moon at the end of this week. This Leo full moon will be on February 1st. I want to talk more about this new moon next week because there's just so much going on in the sky right now. This full moon will be at 13 degrees of Leo. This Leo full moon, while it's not an eclipse, it's in a sign where there will be an eclipse in August. There will be eclipses in Aquarius and Leo even in 2027. And so it's going to start to bring up themes that are going to be with us even into 2027, maybe even 2028. I have to see if there's any more Leo Aquarius eclipses in 2028. Can't remember off the top of my head. So we want to start to listen with this full moon on what are the themes that are being activated, because typically Leo is about the self, it's about individuality, it's about passion and creativity. But this is the Leo full moon. There's opposite Mars and Pluto. It's opposite Mercury and Venus, also in Aquarius. So we'll talk about that next week. Speaking of humanity and the collective, I just wanted to share that I am doing a free webinar. This will be February 5th, so next week, next Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern. It'll be about an hour, followed with a 10 to 15 minute guided meditation-like practice. And this is to give you an introduction to energetic sciences. This is something that I teach for a Swiss-based platform called Mercy Academy. I've been teaching for them since 2018, so actually quite a while. And for me, energetic sciences is very profound, more specifically because it gives a very structured way to not just work on your own energy and rise your own consciousness, but because everything is connected. This is something that we see even in astrology. When we do something for ourselves, it helps the greater whole, it helps the collective. And so we're going to learn just briefly about consciousness, about energies, subtle energies, and even something called the weft, which is the energetic fabric of reality. The weft is also the sixth element. It is the support for life. It is the support for creation. It's the support for intuition, and it's what connects everyone and everything. And as you can imagine, with everything that's happening, there's a lot of movements in the weft, and how do we be of service to the weft? So this is something that we will talk about on February 5th. I do these introductions because I am planning a 2-day intensive, a module 1 intensive, where you learn about the fundamentals of energy, particularly the energy this side, meaning there are two sides to reality, the side that we can see that's physical and the side that we can't see. But you learn about energy, you learn about the positions of consciousness, the brain, the support of the brain, and how to open up something called our superconsciousness, and more importantly, how do we begin to feel the weft with our hands. So that will be actually on February 21st and 22nd. It is from 11 to 5 Eastern, both days. You do need to be present for both days, because it really is a transmission. It's a shift of consciousness, and it's meant to open up your subtle senses and open up your ability to see from your superconsciousness. So the link is in the show notes. You can also go to my website, empoweringastrology.com, or even Mercia Academy's website. I think it's mercia-academy.ch, because they're in Switzerland. And I hope that you can join me. But the introduction is free. It's next week on the 5th. Sign up to register to watch it. It'll be via the platform, but also on Zoom. And we will do, again, a guided meditation-like activity to be able to begin to feel this energetic fabric so that we can open up our consciousness. So there you go, very Aquarian. So let's look at each of the 12 zodiac signs, starting with Aries. Aries, it is a big week for you because Mars, your planet, which, as you remember, last Friday, Mars went to Aquarius, it meets up with Pluto. You presently have 5 planets in something called your 11th sign. The 11th sign is not about you, it's not about your home, it's not about your family. It's about your community. It's about society, humanity, social issues and social causes, networks, but also even perhaps hoping and dreaming for a better future. And so with so much going on in your 11th sign, you're really being pulled outside of your personal realm and out into your community, or even into these larger issues and social causes that Aquarius can activate. Mars conjunct Pluto, keep in mind, this is something that we've been talking about for the past couple of years, is that Pluto is now in Aquarius. Well, now as of November 2024. And this is an area that will see a lot of great shifts and transformations over the next 20 years. I know it's a long time. So whatever is happening, it's just to take note, it's just to observe, and how it's connecting to a larger story that you may not be able to see at the moment. That said, on a more personal level, Mars conjunct Pluto, it's a power week. It's not just tomorrow, the 27th. This is sort of stretching out even beyond. When you meet up with Pluto symbolically, to some degree, it's a quote unquote rebirth. It's a transformation. And so you may feel that this week is really pushing at you to make a transformation. Whether that is to rise above yourself, Pluto can really help us to do that. Or maybe where you're seeing your shadow. We all have a shadow self. Maybe it's not the best part of ourselves, but Pluto is showing us that so that you can make a transformation and a reformation. Speaking of Aries, you now have Neptune in Aries. This is a completion of 14 years, perhaps longer, because Neptune has a much longer cycle, and it's been 160 years since it's been in Aries, but you had 14 years of Neptune in what's called your 12th sign of spirituality. That said, Neptune going into Aries commences something in your life. You may not see it. That's the thing. Neptune, it's really hard to concretely see where it is and what it's doing in our lives. But maybe you feel more sensitive. Maybe things that you're feeling are not the things that you typically feel. Neptune can be a great sensitizer. It's meant to make us more aware of who we are beyond this world and the world even beyond this world. It's again a very transcendent planet, but sometimes it really pulls us into the deepest parts of ourselves. So that's like a bigger conversation, because Neptune is really part of a bigger shift of your life. But this is, again, the start of something. Maybe you can look at 2025 as sort of showing you that something is beginning to shift. But now here you are, and especially when Saturn gets into Aries on February 13th, it really truly is a new beginning symbolically. Keep in mind, and before I forget, you've got just 3 weeks of Saturn left in Pisces. It's to be very conscientious. I know I've said this a few times before, very conscientious about what you want to bring with you into February 13th and what you want to leave behind. Taurus. So Venus is your planet, and Venus, it's in a lineup of planets in Aquarius at the moment. So we actually have 5 planets in Aquarius. Aquarius for you is your career sign. You got Venus, we got the Sun, we got Mars, we have Pluto, and we even have Mercury. So this may translate, especially now that Mars is in those spaces, it may translate as just a lot of things going on either in your professional life, or more is being asked of you around duties and responsibilities, or maybe it's your public life, your public reputation, because the 10th sign is a very public-facing part of our astrology. But keep in mind, this is a little bit of a bigger conversation, that Pluto has been in your 10th sign since roughly November of 2024. You had some times in 2023, in the beginning of 2024, but really since November of 2024. What does this mean? It means that you are in the early stages of a much larger story, of some sort of bigger transformation in your career. It doesn't mean that you leave what you're doing, but something has to change. And Pluto is always trying to show us something about ourselves. So if you have a problem with power, a problem with authority, or a problem going after with what you want, then how do you use this time to really look at yourself and make a transformation and a reformation? Venus will, I think by the next couple of weeks, it will be in Aquarius. So there is a shift of your planet out of Aquarius, but Aquarius in general is going to be a major focus of your astrology throughout 2026, because you're going to have a solar eclipse in this space in February. Your career, your public life, your roles and duties and responsibilities, this is going to be a bigger area of change and transformation throughout the year. So now that Mars is there, listen for what's coming up. And in particular, Mars conjunct Pluto tomorrow, the 27th, even though this sort of extends into the rest of the week, where do you feel that push to make a change? For example, maybe you thought you wanted your career to go in a certain direction, and now, in 2026, you're feeling actually it wants to go in a different direction. Pluto for some Tauruses may mean that your career is in a state of dismantling and rebuilding. That's not going to be for everybody, but in case that is relevant for you. Neptune is now in Aries. And Aries, this is wrapping up 14 years of Neptune in Pisces, your sign of community, society, social issues, and social causes. And Neptune in Aries is taking you into something called your 12th. The 12th is a space in our astrology. It's the last space. We can't see it. It represents the world within. It represents the world outside of us. I don't mean the world around us. I mean something subtle, something spiritual. And whatever Neptune in Aries means for you is going to be very personal to your evolution, your transformation. And I kind of said something similar in the introduction, because I talked about how the zodiac is a ladder. And so when we get to the 12th, we reach the part of our astrology that we're just trying to reveal what is hidden. It could be our blind spots, it could be our dreams, but in reality, the 12th is what is the step of the ladder that takes us to the highest parts of creation. I know it's kind of a very esoteric way of looking at things. So now that Neptune's there, it's harder to point at it, because I think you have to sort of listen for it and feel for it over the coming months and even over the next few years. But with Saturn going into this space, the 12th on February 13th, the 12th will be your priority 2026, 2027, into the beginning of 2028. To release, to let go, to go within, to prioritize your spirituality, to prioritize your internal healing and compassion. And it really means different things to different Tauruses, of course, but that's where the clock, or at least one of the places your personal clock is beginning to point. Gemini, so Mercury is your planet, and right now we've got 5 planets, including Mercury, in Aquarius. That's a lot of planets in one place, and Aquarius is something called your 9th sign. So maybe we talked about this last week, especially with Mars going into Aquarius, but the 9th is a hard place to concretely identify, because it gets into themes about what do you believe in, what do you stand for. Of course, we're all different people and we believe in different things, but the role of the 9th is to get us to look outside of ourselves, to really begin to develop a sense of right and wrong, to whether that's through a philosophy, whether that's through religion. I'm sort of saying this sort of as a broader look at astrology. So the 9th sort of says to you, especially with Mercury there, your planet, it's a time to look out towards the world. You may feel this as a need to travel, to foreign travel, or to travel great distance, or maybe it's philosophical. You need to get very clear about a personal philosophy, how you lead your life, your sense of truth and convictions. For some of you, for some Geminis, it's a time to really focus on education. And for some Geminis, particularly who are writers, it's a time to get your voice out there, to publish something, because the 9th, the 10th, and the 11th in our personal astrology is the most public-facing parts of our astrology. And you're sort of reaching through a part of your year, your personal year, which is more public-facing. But keep in mind, whatever you think you believe in, whatever you think you stand for, that Pluto is in this part of your astrology. It will be in this part of your astrology for many years. And whatever is being activated this week is part of a much bigger story, a much bigger shift and transformation in your relationship with either the world, or what's right and wrong, or what you believe in and what you stand for. But again, with Mercury in the mix, you may be saying things or speaking about things in a way that could be powerful, it could be transformative, it could be inspirational, but it's just to be careful, because sometimes with Pluto, whatever is hidden within suddenly comes out. So that's just sort of a general statement. But having said all that, Neptune has finally left Pisces, and for you, Gemini, Pisces is your career sign. So this has been 14 years of healing, transcending, transforming your relationship with duty and responsibility, and perhaps even your career in your public life. Neptune in Aries goes into something called your 11th, your community, your society, humanity, your social issues, and social causes. And Neptune is saying that there will be a great work of evolution in this space over the next 14 years. However, Saturn will get into this space on February 13th. So Saturn is much more tangible. Saturn talks about, where is your priority for the next 2.5, 3 years? And your priority for the next 2.5, 3 years will be your community, building community, your friendships, strengthening friendships, drawing boundaries where boundaries needs to happen. But Neptune's the wild card. Neptune sort of speaks to compassion and empathy and needing to transcend something. So it's shifting your relationship with community and friendship over a much larger time, and that is a bigger conversation. Cancer. So the moon is your planet, and the moon this week, we're actually coming up to a full moon. This will be on February 1st, or for some people in the world will be on February 2nd on Monday. But we start the week. Where is the moon right now? I kind of forgot where the moon is. The moon right now is in Taurus. So for you, Taurus is something called your 11th sign. It's pointing you to, especially since Sunday and today, Monday, and into, I think, half of tomorrow, Tuesday, that this is really pointing you towards community, society, social issues, and social causes. Then the moon will get into Gemini around Wednesday, midway through Wednesday, and it starts to point you towards the 12th, going in, reflecting, releasing, letting go, preparing for the next cycle. And then at the end of the week, the moon is in Cancer, I think even into Saturday. That is a renewal, a new beginning for you. And then we will have the full moon on Sunday into Monday. Just to quickly talk about this full moon, even though I want to revisit it next week, it is in Leo. Leo is your second sign of money, income, material stability, and security. This full moon is playing off of larger themes, which could be money related, it could be value related. This could be literally what you value, monetarily, or this could just be about what you value as a human being. So that said, we have a lot of planets in Aquarius at the moment, and Aquarius is something called your 8th. And sometimes I use this visual of being in the 8th room because I think it really helps us to use this time, Aquarius season, or any time there's a lot of planets in Aquarius, like now, to be in the space of the 8th. The 8th is a time that is meant to transform you. It's meant to look within. It's meant for you to face yourselves. And you can even go back to Saturn's time in the 8th. This would have been 2020, 2021, 2022. It was a time when you really had to prioritize this inner transformative work. But that said, Aquarius season comes once a year, but it's unusual that we have so many planets in Aquarius at the same time. We have Mars, we have Pluto, we have Venus, we have Mercury. Mars is a planet that talks about your career, your ambitions, your responsibilities. Venus talks about home and family. So maybe a lot of things are coming up for you right now. You sort of need to sit with yourself, face yourself, see the things that you haven't seen before, perhaps. Because the true role of the 8th is the alchemy of the soul. It's when we face ourselves, when we go within, when we do the work, that's what brings us the personal transformation and the alchemy of the soul. Mars conjunct Pluto tomorrow, the 27th of January, it's a very powerful combination of planets. In particular, it activates a much bigger story of Pluto's time in your 8th for the coming years. So listen for what is coming out of the deepest parts of your psyche. Listen for what is hidden that is now revealed, where you feel a surge of emotional power or a surge to really make a transformation that allows you to become a better version of yourself. But it is an inward-facing energy. It can even bring up emotional legacies, family legacies, inheritances, questions about value and worth. But it all prepares you to leave the 8th, to leave Aquarius season. And we do have Saturn in Pisces, and all this energy is pointing towards a sign that continues to ask you, at least for the next 3 weeks, what do you believe in, what do you stand for, and what do you think is true? Oh, I should talk about Neptune and Aries. So Neptune has gone into your 10th. This is like a bigger story because Neptune would be in your 10th, career, public life, duties and responsibilities on a larger level for the next 14 years. And Neptune, it's not that Neptune isn't ambitious, but Neptune has very clear wants and needs. And Neptune sort of says to us, not always very loudly, sometimes very quietly, it doesn't matter if they pay you $1 million to do what you do. First, it has to feed your soul. Or it doesn't matter if you're the most powerful person in the world. If it doesn't feed something deeper, something's out of alignment. So you're beginning to make a bigger shift in aligning your ambitions, your career with something much deeper within you. Leo. So we will have a Leo full moon at the end of this week and into the beginning of next week, especially for those that are in Europe and Asia. But we will talk again about this, but I wanted to sort of say it because when we have a full moon in our sign, it puts us in the spotlight. Things are happening in our life. And the other thing that I wanted to sort of put on your radar briefly is that in 2026 and 7, but in 2026, we're going to have eclipses in Leo. We'll have one in August 12th, and we'll also have an eclipse February 17th in Aquarius, which is relationships. So life is beginning to pivot and move, and maybe you can sort of see what's happening, maybe you can't see what's happening, and so we'll come back to that later because I want to talk about Aquarius season. And Aquarius right now has, I keep wanting to say 6, but 5 planets in Aquarius at the moment, and Aquarius is relationships for you. As much as this time is putting the spotlight on you, this Leo full moon later this week, let's not forget that Aquarius season is about other people. You've got 5 planets in this part of your astrology. Maybe things are happening in relationship. Maybe people are coming into your life. Maybe it's just a busy time, but keep in mind, number one, that Pluto is in this space. You are at the beginning of a much larger chapter of your life where relationships have to change and transform. That means very specific things for you versus another Leo, because we all are our own human beings. We all have our own lived history. So when Mars meets up with Pluto tomorrow, the 27th, it activates a much bigger story. And it's just to listen for what is the themes about relationship that are being activated. Pluto is typically about power and control, about facing sometimes the parts of ourselves that we don't want to see, that we often project onto other people. It can be about things that we have not claimed for ourselves, and sometimes we need to take something that has been, again, projected onto other people. It can be about very new, powerful relationships coming into your life. But again, it is part of a much bigger story and chapter in your life. Then we have Neptune going to Aries. Aries is going into something called your 9th sign. It's about what you believe in, what you stand for, what you think is true. It's hard to say concretely what this is going to mean for you. Neptune is a very subtle influence, but on some level it says this area needs to be healed and needs to be transcended. It will be more concrete when Saturn gets into this space on February 13th, because then your priority becomes the 9th in 2026 and 2027, beginning 2028. And it's to get very clear about your sense of right and wrong, your philosophies, your sort of guiding principles, to focus on your education, to travel, to explore, to seek answers. But that said, you've got 3 more weeks of Saturn's time in the 8th. I think it's been very hard in general for Leo suns, because there's been a lot of emotional heavy lifting since 2023. But it's to begin to put into focus the work that you've been doing, because the work that we do in the 8th becomes the real currency that we take with us throughout the rest of our life. Virgo, so Mercury is your planet, and as we speak, Mercury is with 4 other planets in Aquarius. That's a lot of energy in one part of your astrology. And every Aquarius season in general is the season for you to turn towards health and wellness, for you to focus on work and projects and sort of the daily duties and responsibilities that we all have. from day to day. And it might be a busy time. Typically Virgo, although of course not all Virgo risings, you typically are a sign that needs everything organized. There's a sense of protocol and operations, and this is always the season for you to revisit protocol and operations and maybe do things a little bit differently. That said, Mars is now in this space. Mars is heating up this part of your life. Maybe you are very busy, you're taking on new projects, or you're getting your checkups, you're really focusing on positive changes in health and wellness. Maybe you're being a little bit of a workaholic at the moment, but keep in mind that Pluto is in this space. It's been in this space for the past 2 years, and this is a space that will need to transform over the coming years. It's hard to say concretely what that will mean because it's very hyper-specific for your own life. But whatever is coming up this week around your relationship with duties and responsibilities, your relationship with service, this can even mean your ability to put other people first and sometimes minimize your wants and needs. That's a real good Virgo trait. But it also can also talk about your relationship with work and something, because Pluto is always about transformation and putting things back into order. Something needs to change. So again, listen for what is coming up this week because it will connect you to a much larger story. And then on top of that, we're going to have a solar eclipse in this space on February 17th. We will talk about this in the coming weeks, but let's talk about Neptune and Aries. So you have had 14 years of Neptune in Pisces. Pisces is a relationship sign. It may be hard to concretely see what has changed, transformed, what has been healed or not healed in the last 14 years around relationship. And this will take you all the way back to it was February 3rd of 2012 is when Neptune made its last arrival in Pisces. But Neptune will never go back to Pisces, and Neptune is now in Aries, your 8th sign. So something, if Neptune is healing and not on a you go, read a book or you take a retreat, and, this is not surface level health and wellness. Like, this is about going into the deepest parts of yourself. And it's hard to concretely say what that's going to mean for you, Virgo, because it is very specific for who you are. If you're the type of person that has taken every emotion that you have and say, I will deal with this later, Neptune is saying, hi, later is now. And especially when Saturn gets into the space, because Saturn is always our priorities, and Saturn says your emotional health and wellness in 2026, 2027, beginning 2028 is your priority. If it's not emotional, it could be internal work, internal transformation work, really looking at the hidden parts of yourself. For some Virgos, it's very financial, or it's about legacies, or it's about power and control and intimacy and vulnerability. But it's to start to tease out what this means for you in your astrology. Libra. So Venus is your planet, and Venus right now is part of a big gaggle of planets in Aquarius. We have Venus, we have Mars, we have Pluto, we have Mercury, and of course the Sun, because it's Aquarius season. And for you, Libra, Aquarius is something called your 5th sign. The 5th sign is our play, our creativity, our self-expression, our joy, our passion. I don't know if that's what you're feeling at the moment, but it could even get into larger themes about who are you? What is your identity? What's your persona? Because sometimes, especially now that Pluto is in this space, it really talks about a need to look at persona, to look at identity, to look at the ego, and to start to make transformations, because Pluto is always about transformation and reformation, but more particularly it's about looking at the shadow self. With Mars in the space, and Mars is a relationship planet, there is something perhaps coming up about relationships this week, your relationship with relationships, your dynamics around power and control and self, and how you express yourself within relationship. Might not be the case for all Libras, but Mars and Pluto is a very potent combination. It talks about, again, something needs to transform and reform. And that's going to be, for example, if you're really good at putting the needs of other people first, Mars and Pluto is really putting that perhaps even in your face, so to speak. That said, we do now, speaking of relationships, Neptune has left Pisces where it was for 14 years, and it's now in your relationship sign. It's hard to say concretely what that will mean because it's very specific. And I feel like I'm a little bit broken record at the moment, but it's very specific to your particular life, your particular experiences. But Neptune says this part of your life either needs to be healed or transcended. And to be healed is to go always into the deepest parts of yourself. If there is a dynamic in relationship that is just not helpful, then Neptune is sort of pulling you either into the illusion or giving you the opportunity to really rise above it, for example. But Neptune will be in this space for 14 years. It's a much bigger arc of transformation. But Saturn will get into this space on February 17th. And there, when Saturn is in this space, it says relationships will be your priority, your top priority in 2026, 2027, and into the beginning of 2028. That said, we are almost to an Aquarius solar eclipse. This is about identity and self, and these are going to be bigger themes as we get into February and even beyond. Scorpio. So Mars is your planet. Mars is your planet, and Mars, it's presently in Aquarius. It went into Aquarius last week. At the moment, we have 5 planets in Aquarius. That is a lot of planets in one part of the zodiac. There's a lot of planets in what's called your sign of home, family, roots, foundation, past, memory, ancestors, your sense of physical address, your internal sense of address. It's a very important part of your astrology because symbolically it holds up your chart. So the sun is here, Mercury is here, who else? Pluto is here, Mars is here. I feel like I'm missing somebody. Venus is there too. And so whatever is happening this week is just to listen for it. It's part of a bigger transformation in home and family that will play out actually over the coming years. Pluto, and maybe you can appreciate this as a Scorpio, but Pluto represents a deep psychic excavation. If ancestral patterns are really bringing, sort of holding you in a space, then Pluto is like, let's dig ourselves out of the space. If there is a dynamic around family and home, Pluto is saying this area needs to be fundamentally transformed. Sort of the imagery that I give, and again, maybe you can appreciate this as a Scorpio, it's like Pluto went into your 4th room of home and family back in 2023 and 2024 and said, Scorpio, I'm here to rip everything out. It's like a big gut level transformation on the sign that holds up your life. I know, again, it's a big statement, but you're a Scorpio, you understand. And Mars in this space says to some degree family is your front burner priority for the next 6 weeks. You throw some Pluto in there, it says this is actually whatever's going on is part of a bigger story. And then we're going to have an eclipse in this space on February 17th. So family, home, whether that's the physicality of home, whether that's the emotionality and memory of home, that's actually going to be a much bigger focus into the next 6 months and beyond. Listen for what's coming up. You may start to hear psychically, intuitively, where things are beginning to shift in your astrology. But we will have much more to talk about in the next couple of weeks. Saturn is, and let me go back to Mars and Pluto because it's a pretty intense energy, and be present with what's coming up. If it's something emotional, if it's going something deep from your subconscious memory, let it release, because Pluto is always the transformation and reformation. Now let's move to Neptune and Aries. Neptune has now gone into your 6th sign. It has never been in your 6th sign in your life. And the 6th sign in anybody's astrology is about our work, our daily duties and responsibilities, about getting things done, even our sense of service or service to other people. It's also health and wellness. Neptune's time in this part of your astrology, it's a little bit hard to say concretely what this will mean for you, because it will be something very specific for you. If you have a very complicated relationship with your physical body, your physical health, how do you heal that and how do you transcend that? If you have a difficult relationship with service to other people, maybe there's themes about inequity or power, then how do you transcend that? It's very specific for your life. But Saturn will get into the space on February 13th, and Saturn is way more concrete, and Saturn is saying your 6 is your top priority, your long-term priority, 2026, 2027, and to the beginning of 2028. And that could mean that you want to make positive changes and transformations in your health and wellness. You want to do your daily rituals and practices differently. But maybe Saturn will help you to start to have more of a lens in what Neptune's time in Aries will mean for you, not just in 2026, but for the next 13 years. Sagittarius. So Jupiter is your planet, and Jupiter, as you know, we've been talking about this since June. Jupiter is in something called your 8th sign. It's kind of a funny time, a little bit for Sagittarius rising, because your planet is in a space where it's about internal reflection, internal work, emotional heavy lifting, prioritizing your emotional health and wellness, themes about legacy, inheritances. It even could be financial, really looking at financial themes, how to create more financial stability and security, especially through income and assets of other people. It's great for potentially having benefits and resources for you. That said, it is Aquarius season. Aquarius, we've got presently 5 planets in Aquarius. That's a lot of planets in one sign of the sky. And it says that at least now, but really because we're going to have a solar eclipse in this space that takes us into August of 2026, the 3rd is going to be a big focus over the coming months. What's the 3rd? The 3rd is a space that talks about, taking classes, learning. Maybe you're really thinking about prioritizing your education. This can mean from, again, taking classes. This is not university level classes. This is really focusing and taking a curriculum and learning a particular thing. It could be about curiosity. It could be even about teaching classes. This is also a space that can talk about people who are teachers. But Aquarius plus the 3rd can also talk about big themes around community, social issues, social causes. But for those that are writers, speakers, it's a time where the voice is really a focus and priority, at least for the next immediate 4 weeks, but even something beyond. It's to listen for what this time means for you. It could just also be a lot of movement, because Aquarius is an air sign, Sagittarius is a fire sign. Air plus fire is not quiet. It wants movement. It's combustive. It's inspirational. And maybe you have something to say. Maybe you're writing things down. Maybe it's shaping, because you're a Sagittarius rising, your sense of philosophy, your sense of truth and meaning, and even purpose. We will again have an eclipse in this space, but we will have a pretty powerful Mars-Pluto conjunction in this space. And so that conjunction will be tomorrow, but whatever is coming up around voice, whatever is coming up around ideas and information, how you speak and how you communicate, it's actually part of a bigger story. Because this area of your life, courtesy of Pluto's time in Aquarius over the coming 2 decades, this area of your life has to transform. If you have a hard time saying something or speaking about something, Pluto is about the real deep in the soul work to release whatever is in the way, for example. But Pluto can give power to what you have to say, and maybe that's where a lot of the focus and energy is this week. There is also Neptune now in Aries. It has finally left your 4th. It has been 14 years of being in your sign of home and family, and maybe you have done a lot of internal work or family work over the last 14 years. But Neptune in Aries says that the bigger work now is around the self, identity, transcending the lower aspects of yourself and ego, and open up to the higher aspects of yourself. Ego doesn't have to be negative, because sometimes it's really about learning to have self-confidence and the power of who we are. And Neptune is trying to get you to open up to the highest expression of who you are. With Saturn going into the space on the 13th of February, Saturn may make this time a little bit more concrete, because Saturn says from 2026 to April 2028, you need to take yourself and take your talents seriously. But I wanted to say before I forget, because Saturn is about to leave your fourth. Home and family has been your priority since 2023. Things will begin to come to an end. Things will begin to come into focus. It's just to begin to listen for where this sort of larger story is beginning to come to an end as Saturn reaches the end of Pisces over the next 3 weeks. Capricorn. So Saturn is your planet, and Saturn is getting ready to leave Pisces. I know I talked about this last week and maybe even the weeks before that, but you've got 3 more weeks of Saturn in Pisces. And then when Saturn goes into Aries on February 13th, it represents not only a shift of focus in your astrology, a shift of priorities in your astrology, but it's actually pointing to a very different part of your life, because over the coming years, whether it's Saturn in Aries or Saturn in Taurus and even Saturn in Gemini at the beginning of the next decade, it's more about your internal life, your home, your family. And for some Capricorns, it's about children, raising children. Of course, not all Capricorns. But you're beginning to come to an end of a sort of period of your life that's been since 2018, really end of 2017, beginning of 2018, where it's been about personal development, self-development. Now it's going to start to be about other people. I have noticed, and I feel like I've said this a few times already, is that when Saturn is in the third, it's in the third right now, it switches on February 13th, it's about the choices that you are making. And Capricorn in general is a sign that is about commitment and seeing things through and working towards building and constructing your relationship with the material world. And maybe you're at a crossroads and you can go this way or you can go this way. But the choices that you are making very well inform that sort of next big stretch of your life over the coming years. Neptune has left your third. It's gone into your fourth of home and family. It says, and it's going to be very specific to each person, but it says that your home environment, or the sort of concept of family, or your past, your memories, your relationship with your parents, that area you will be doing a very deep work on over the coming years. It is to some degree, it is to transcend. It is to transcend your past, to transcend the heavier emotions around home and family. It is to release, to have compassion, to let go. You're at the beginning of the story, so it's something that we'll keep checking in on as we get through Neptune's time in Aries. But when Saturn gets into this space, Saturn will make perhaps this time a little bit more concrete, real, and tangible. What else am I forgetting? Oh, Mars conjunct Pluto. So we have so many planets right now in Aquarius. Aquarius is your second sign of money, income, material stability, and security. So this could be a time when you're really looking at the money that you're making, the money that you have, the resource that you have, perhaps even larger questions about value and worth, or even, am I stable? Am I secure? Do I have enough? So there's a big focus in your astrology at the moment. So Mars is a planet that talks about home and family. Maybe you're thinking about making a home purchase, or you're making an investment, but it's possible that Mars is bringing up some very deep emotions, and those emotions could be informed by past memories. Am I safe? We all have different experiences, of course, growing up, or different relationships with family. Be present with whatever is being shown to you, because the real power of Pluto is to help us to transmute something. Whatever is happening this week is actually part of a much bigger story. Pluto will be in your second sign of money and income for 2 decades. And this is a part of a story this week that connects to a much greater whole. So it's just to sort of observe and to listen, and to always, of course, reach for your highest expression. Aquarius. Aquarius. So Saturn is your planet, and happy birthday, Aquarius. Forgot to say that. There's a lot of planets in your chart right now, in your astrology, in your sign at the moment. We have 5 planets in Aquarius. That is an unusual amount of planets in Aquarius. So we have the sun, of course. It's your birthday, or it's your Aquarius rising. It's the start of your personal year. We have Venus there. We have Mercury there, and we also have Mars and Pluto. I've said this a few times before. I know it's a very intense visual. I am a Scorpio, but it is as if Pluto, when it went into Aquarius 2 years ago, and sort of again in November 2024, Pluto walked across the front doorstep of your life and said, Aquarius, I'm here to rip everything out. It is like you are in the early stages of a complete overhaul, a complete transformation, like one of those television shows that you watch. I watch a lot of them with my dad, where you do like the complete gut renovation of the space, and you put the new wiring in, you put all this, and that's sort of where you're at. Every Aquarius, of course, or Aquarius rising, will live this time in a way that's very particular to their own soul and their own soul's journey. But it is to listen for those sort of keywords and themes this week, because Mars and Pluto make a conjunction. We had this conjunction, I think it was in February of 2024. That was only the first time in Aquarius and in your lifetime. But Mars is the activator, the instigator, the provocateur, but it's also the motivator. It gives you energy. It's saying it's time to start something new, but perhaps in order to start something new, something needs to strip away. Maybe it's to have more confidence, or maybe it's to leave something behind. Again, it's to sort of listen for what's coming up for you. You will have an eclipse in Aquarius in 3 weeks. I'm sure your life is a bit interesting at the moment. There are things that are shifting and moving. It's about you. It's about relationships. There's going to be a full moon in your relationship sign at the end of this week, but we'll talk about this on Monday next week. And you even will have a solar eclipse in your relationship sign on August 12th. So it's just a big time to be an Aquarius. And then, oh, by the way, your Saturn, your planet, changes signs on February 13th. So February in general is probably a big month for you. It represents a shift of focus and priorities. Neptune is now in Aries, and so sort of a larger focus is happening, not just about you, Aquarius, but also how do you speak, how do you communicate, how do you listen, what is the power of your voice, what do you need to transcend, do you speak, do you not speak, what's the role of education in your life. So this area we'll come back to, but it's one of your main focuses in 2026, 7, and beginning of 8. Pisces. So Jupiter is your planet, and Jupiter is in Cancer. Cancer is your 5th sign. I've talked about this a few times already. It's just a reminder that with Jupiter in your 5th, in spite of all the heaviness that you've been dealing with over the past few years with Saturn in Pisces and eclipses in Pisces, Jupiter is saying, be yourself. Invest in the things that light you up and give you joy. Come back to what gives you passion, because that's the fuel that really gets you to live your life and to nourish yourself in the midst of all this heavy astrology. So speaking of which, Neptune is now out of Pisces. I know some Pisces have been celebrating. Even if you're not a Pisces sun, Pisces rising, Neptune is out of Pisces, never to return in your lifetime. Look back the best that you can since 2011 and 12, particularly since February 2012, Neptune has been doing some sort of work in your astrology, whether it's your relationship with power, your relationship with standing on your own 2 feet, knowing who you are, sensitivities, intuition, spirituality. And it's shifting the focus now towards money, income, material stability, and security. And in fact, on February 13th, Saturn will get into this space, and it says that your material life will be one of your major priorities even into the beginning of 2028. But Neptune there is the question mark. It says something needs to be healed, something needs to be transcended. And if you have a particularly complicated relationship with money, we all typically do, how do you begin to go beyond that, to let it go, to release it? Much bigger story. It is Aquarius season, and Aquarius is something called your 12th sign. There are presently 5 planets in your 12th. It is probably a time in Pisces, you need to rest, you need to relax, you need to go within, you need to consult your intuition, you need to meditate, you need to pray, recharge your spiritual batteries. Because typically when there's a lot of planets in the 12th, it's not about your physical life, your external life, it's about your internal life and your spiritual life. There will be an eclipse in this space in 3 weeks' time. It speaks to larger shifts and endings and, again, spirituality and asking bigger questions and existential questions. But there is a Mars-Pluto conjunction that's happening in this space tomorrow. It might not be so easy to see because anything in the 12th on some level is hidden. But Mars is an inspirer and motivator, and it's inspiring you to look beyond yourself, to ask big questions, to prioritize your spirituality, to meditate, to pray, all these things that I've said before. But Mars and Pluto really make this to the front burner, so to speak. Now, Pluto will be in your 12th for a much longer time, 2 decades. So you're just in a much larger period of your life where your relationship with spirituality, or your relationship with who you think you are versus who you are at the level of your higher self, that is beginning to make a profound shift. So that is your look at the astrology of this week, January 26th through February 1st, 2026. Again, lots going on in the world, lots going on in the sky. We will continue to have big things to talk about over the next few weeks as we navigate some of the marquee astrology, the headlining astrology for 2026. I did a whole webinar on this, the astrology of 2026. It is still very relevant because it really gives you an outline for the year. It talks about key themes and of course talks about a sign-by-sign guide. So you can go to the link in the show notes or go to my website, empoweringastrology.com. You can follow me on Facebook, I'm on Instagram, I'm on Spotify, I'm on YouTube, and I appreciate you all. I'm also doing that free webinar on February 5th. Also, the link is in the show notes. This is on energy and consciousness, something that I do parallel to my work as an astrologer, but in a world where we need more consciousness, it seems very topical at this time. So I hope you can join me on February 5th or even my weekend intensive on February 21st and 2nd to go more deeply into these concepts in this module 1 of energetic sciences. So I appreciate you all. It's been a lot to talk about. Had a late start, and so yeah, I appreciate you all, and I will see you all next week. Take care.